And good evening, everyone. We're here for the Power Hour at North Grove Brewers in Montague. Great to have you here. VanDyk Mortgage, our sponsor. I'm with who am I with?
I can't say right now.
I'm with Mike Taylor, my partner in crime, and we are blessed and pleased to have Les Gowell, who has drawn the short straw and decided to come on the show for us. Les, welcome aboard.
Thanks a lot, John. Nice to be here.
Going to give it over to Mike for a proper intro here.
Well, what we want to do is, tonight we wanted to, I thought it'd be a lot of fun for us. I know Les has tremendous history in the greater Muskegon area and West Michigan Conference. And, I always enjoy when we get a chance to reflect back and look at some of the great teams, great athletes we've had come through our area. And, there's a lot of things I don't know because I haven't been around this area all that long. John grew up down here in Muskegon. Les grew up in Shelby. And between those two guys, and, I've been here for 20 years, so 8 of it I haven't been incarcerated. And so, we figured we could get some great discussion and reflect back over some of the great athletes, great teams we've had come through our area over the course of time. We're going to go back into, I would say, the late 60s. Les was in school. John was in school down in Muskegon at that time in elementary and middle school. But, at that time, things started happening real quick up in this area. And this has been, as I have learned, a hotbed for talent. And, we've had talent come out of here and play pro football, pro basketball, pro baseball. We've had pro hockey. We've had everything. So, Les, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on here, and I've known you, a long time, a lot of respect. But this is going to be a lot of fun tonight.
Well, I hope so. I hope so, because like I told you earlier, the less I say, the smarter I sound. Okay?
That's our motto also. I want to go back, and let's talk about, when you grew up down in Muskegon at this time, it happened to be a time in the late 60s, early 70s, Les, when you were in school up in Shelby, and you guys came through with what I believe to be, because even I didn't live here at the time, and I heard about these teams in Kalamazoo, but you were a part of being in school in Shelby with, I think, one of the, if not the greatest team to ever be in this area basketball team. And what it was like to be in there and know those guys and be a part of not just 1 year, okay? Walk us through what it was like watching those guys grow up as a unit.
Well, the community spirit was just amazing. People, basically there was nobody in town for the tournament. They were all going to the games. But, Shelby won it in state championship in 71 and 72 in basketball. And in 1970, they got beat by Whitehall in overtime in the district first game. Whitehall never got challenged, they got beat at Whitehall against West Michigan Christian.
I got to stop you. Right there, when you talk about, at that point, and you talk about the community, Les, what's it like in a gymnasium? What time did people have to get to a game if they wanted to get in?
I played on the junior varsity team when in 1970, and I played in front of a packed house. We were horrible, but people needed a seat. And the gym was filled for the junior varsity game. They didn't watch it, but they had their seat. And that's a true story. There was people there, they were filling that for the junior varsity game because they wanted to watch the varsity. And that was great. It was the old Shelby gym, and the bleachers went right down to the floor. And that just added a little bit. I've even had officials say that. They missed the old gym because of the closeness of it.
It was close.
It was close.
Yes,
close. It was.
But when you talk about, what percent of the crowd, up in Shelby, it had to have been like 99% of Shelby people.
It was.
And what was the feeling if you couldn't get into the gym?
Yeah. What's that again?
What was the feeling if you wanted to come and watch a game and you couldn't get in it?
A lot of people stood in the lobby. They stood in the lobby, and that's where you could smoke back then, so it was all blue. I remember that. I announced the games. That's about one time I started announcing the games, but it was blue in the lobby, and that's where people would try to get a peek at this really, really good team because everybody was talking about it.
Oh, my God, I can't even imagine. Talk to us about the players growing up, the nucleus of that group.
Oh, well,
Because your best friend was on it.
Yeah, but Paul Griffin was on it, and all those guys played together since they were in elementary school. And Paul had told me that his mother could have coached them to a state championship because they all knew each other. They played like out in the street when they were in elementary school, and it just carried on right into high school. And the more you do something, the better you get at it, and that's what happened with them, basically.
Were a lot of those kids multi-sport athletes, Les, back then?
Yes, most of them were.
What was the starting five?
Well, there's Paul Griffin, Al Griffin, Kim Griffin. They were the front line, and Al was the shortest one at 6'4", 6'3", and then there was Bob Beckman, Bob Goslin at guards, and Bob Goslin was an amazing athlete. I don't know if you remember his name, you probably not, but he ran track, and he was a member of the state championship mile relay with Paul Griffin, right? But Bob was a phenomenal baseball player, but there wasn't time. He could have done it all. He was quarterback on a football team, part of the time, but he was a great baseball player, just a great all-around athlete. I'm thinking, holy cow, this guy can do everything. I played baseball with him in summertime. He was the best third baseman I ever had. He was just a little guy, but he was just natural. But man, could he play basketball? But he was on the starting five.
A lot of Type A personalities, Les?
Yeah. They just knew each other so well, And then there was Dan Van Dyne, and he was a starter. And Gord Vanderslice came. Well, Gord Vanderslice was a little before them, but there have been so many good basketball players. It's hard to pick them all out, but the starting five they were good, and they could have beat just about anybody in any class back then.
I agree with that. And what was the mentality of those guys? When they got ready to play, getting ready for the season, did they know?
Oh, yeah, they were
I mean, they're
confident.
like, oh, this is going to be...
They were so confident. I remember talking to them. They just knew. They just knew like they were going to go to school in the morning. They knew they were going to win, just by how much. They knew Paul was going to get the rebounds. They knew Bob Goslin was going to hit the shots, or Bobby Beckman, or they're going to get the ball to Kim down low. They knew that. Paul had 50 rebounds, I think, against Montague once. I think it's a state record yet. They knew he was going to get the rebound. They just had so much confidence.
So none of the games were close even, really?
Not very many of them.
Wow.
No, not very many of them.
So it was just you paid your money, you watched a very,
West
very
Michigan
talented
Christian
team.
was always the big one. Like that district first game of the districts, they got beaten overtime. In that game, Paul Griffin fouled out with a minute to go, and they put another guy in. I won't even say his name because Shelby was ahead with less than a minute to go, and that guy took a shot. Missed it. Christian went down, scored, and tied the game up, and they won it in overtime. Otherwise, Shelby probably would have won 3 in a row.
Oh, my God.
That guy, I didn't even know about that. And there was a reunion game several years ago, and all these guys were talking about it. That one player showed up that took the bad shot, who never played again after that. But they ripped him and thinking, what was that about? Yeah. You don't remember that? They said, yeah, he came in and took a shot when they were ahead with less than a minute to go, missed the shot. He was wide open. Everybody's guarding Kim Griffin.
Sure. What's it like in the hallways at a school when you have that kind of talent?
It was just like the community. There's banners everywhere, the band. Of course, there wasn't all the other stuff going on back then. That was it. There wasn't all the social media. Everything happened in school. There was spectator buses, which a lot of schools had, but for every game, and they were more than one, because most of the kids would go. It was almost like if you didn't go, what's the matter with you? Why aren't you going?
That was my next question, is how did the team, how did the fans, did they travel with the team wherever they went?
Caravan behind the buses, yeah. Even for some of the regular games, Yeah, it was just phenomenal.
Like a scene out of Hoosiers, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What were the other teams like during those years? Obviously, the basketball team was great. Was the football team solid? The baseball team solid as well?
No, they weren't solid. They were just competitive.
Okay.
I think the best baseball team ever around here was at Whitehall when Nate McCall played. That was they had.
What year was that?
Everybody.
What years was that? 95, 97?
Oh, I think it was 98.
Okay.
With Nate, David Miller. I mean, these are Division I baseball players, all on the same team. There's no reason. I think they just had a bad game. They should have won the state championship. Sure. They were so good.
Right. And John Heisinger, a longtime athletic director, he was quite the baseball player back in the day.
John Heisinger. You think about John Heisinger. You think Nate McCall was in pros. John Heisinger was behind Bill Freehan and Jack Price. Yeah. Otherwise, he's with the Tigers. Yeah. That's a local guy.
Right.
That's pretty good.
Right. That's amazing.
And then your career, Les, you've been a coach at just about every.
Oh, I coached baseball and softball basically. I started a youth football program up in Oceana County, but I just coached baseball and softball. And the thing is, I coached my daughter who's over there at the girls softball team, but they get over in a doubleheader, and the boys are still in the first game. So then I go over and help Brian.
Yeah.
I did them both. I was blessed to be able to do that, you know, and they were really, really successful also. But it's nice to be able to do that, you know. You know, Shelby's had such good coaches. The only sport that's changed coaches is football, because you've had Brian Wright, who's been there at baseball for as long as can be. You know, I actually went to the administration to see if they could name the field after him, and they do have something in writing. He's either got to die or retire, because nobody's going to coach baseball at Shelby as long as Brian Wright has.
Right.
40 years, whatever.
Exactly.
Rick Zulik in basketball. And Rick, there's nobody better than Rick.
Well, it's tough to see. Look around the conference. What were some of the other? When you look at some of the other coaches in the West Michigan Conference since the '70s, what are who were the coaches that have been around? Jack Sugars, came in and was at actually Oak Ridge for 20-some years.
And Joe Coletta that helped him. Joe could coach any sport and be successful. I'll tell you that right now. He'll come back. He's going to coach girls softball, I believe, at Oak Ridge this year. And you watch them. They will be good. Yeah. Joe Coletta is a fantastic. You don't have to be good. And he was good at baseball, but you don't have to be good at a sport to be a good coach. And Joe and Brian Wright, they have it. And Rick Zulik, they have it.
Right. He is. He's an outstanding person on top of that.
Yeah, I think Joe Coletta really made Jack Sugars better.
When you came through school and competed in baseball and everything, who were some of the athletes back then that you stand out in the conference that you go, you know what?
Well, oh man, well it's changed so much because baseball.
Absolutely.
Every sport's gotten better. All the athletes have gotten better. Back when I played, it was man, oh man, there wasn't that many.
But when you talk about social media, now these kids, they're friends with kids on every team, and they talk and communicate.
There's a kid from Hardin, Steve Cutter, who happened to be a coach for the Clippers, and then he coached one of the new independent teams up in Traverse City. And I helped him with baseball back when he was in high school at Hardin. He'd come down and throw at the Shelby Gym with me, and he was a good baseball player, but he wasn't fantastic. Right. Brian Wright said he's a really, really good coach. He studied the game. He said even some of the Clippers that move on, they come back to him. Now that is a compliment.
Yeah, that is good. That is good. Baseball, as you've seen over the course of time, Les, with the implementation of summer programs, travel programs, and it still affects us up our way because unless the kids can get down here into the city a little bit, the travel leagues, it's hard to get going.
Yeah, it is, and the weather's a lot better in the summer. Yeah. In the spring, it's terrible.
Oh, yeah. Right.
When my son played college at Aquinas, they played fall ball, and fall ball was so much better because the weather's nice. I said, this is when they should have this is when they should have the season. Yeah. In the spring, it could be snowing. It might be. Right. I mean, some of these schools, they start there in another couple of weeks. There's snow everywhere up here.
Have we ever had a state champion baseball team out of the greater Muskegon area?
Boy, I don't know. That Whitehall team they should have won it. When my son played, we were 38-1 at the start of the year, and we were ranked number 1 in the state. But in the regionals, we faced the number 2 team in the state with a left-hander that threw 90 miles an hour.
That game was played down in.
No, it was played over east somewhere.
Was it
Stanwood or somewhere?
Okay, I thought it was played down like by Zealand or something. For some reason.
And I should know this, but Coach Skidemo over at Catholic Central has some very good baseball teams, and I'm not sure if they went all the way to state or not, but they might have. They might have.
They've had a lot of state caliber teams also.
Yeah, my apologies if I'm shortchanging them, but I know they've had some.
That's a good question, though. I'm sure somebody's out there thinking, well, yeah, there has been. I don't know.
Well, and even if you look at a guy like from North Muskegon, we had a basketball player go to the Big Ten, Drew Namick. Right. And Drew played baseball.
He was good too. Izzo come and watched him at Spring Lake once. I remember. I remember he was playing first base. I was coaching at the time, and he's playing first base. He was a good first baseman, and they threw it in the dirt to him. And I can't remember who was coaching North Muskegon. Maybe it was Walt. He said, why in the world would you throw it in the dirt when the guy's 6'10"? You know, and that was a good question. Why would you?
Sure.
You can't throw it. You try to throw it over his head, he's probably going to catch it. Right. But he threw it down by his feet.
Right.
But he was good.
Right.
Multi-sport once again.
And again, I think that's great that, you know, he goes out and plays another sport with his friends and, you know, is successful at it.
Yes.
You know, is successful at it. You know, I can't remember his high school basketball team, but they must have been pretty good also.
They were. Yeah, they were. They were playing when my son was playing, actually, and he was good friends with Drew and Eric Kravaco and Matt Barushko. They were all on that team, and they were good, and they beat Shelby in I think in the regionals, they had to go over to Sanford Meridian to play North Muskegon. And they got beat by North Muskegon, and then North Muskegon had to play, I don't know, Flint Beach or somebody like that, and they got beat in a really close game, but they were good. They were good. But Drew Namick was a good player.
You know, when you
might have used him a little different.
Well, and it's, you know, and again, we talk about sometimes athletes, you know, was Drew Namick going to Michigan State a bad choice for him? You know, if he'd have gone like Paul Griffin to the MAC, you know, what would his career have been like had he had gone to the MAC and been a featured player, a prolific scorer, no doubt, and just, you know, been on the floor for 4 years straight, like Paul was. You know,
that's a question that can be asked over and over with different kids, I'm sure.
Exactly.
If you wouldn't have went there, if you'd have went to a MAC school, you're going to be the prolific scorer. You know, everybody's looking at you then. Yeah. I remember because Barushko and Kravaco, who played with Drew Namick at North Muskegon, one of them had a great game over against like the Flint school. And Gene Gifford was having, I think it was Kravaco, he's going to play at Muskegon Community College. And he was on fire over there, and Gene was thinking, oh man, I'm going to lose him.
Yeah, exactly.
Because somebody's going to see him.
Right.
You know?
Now, Shelby also had a guy, this would be maybe even a little bit before your time, played in the NFL, Dave
Witzel.
Yes.
Yep. Dave Witzel, I think he's before my time, but he was at New Orleans when I went down when Paul Griffin was there. And I went to his house, actually. It was pretty neat. He was a pretty nice guy. Yeah, he had a book. It said everything I know about football by Dave Witzel. And it looked like a legitimate book, hardcover. I opened it up and every page was blank. You've probably seen a book like that. I'm thinking, holy cow. Yeah. But that's the first time I saw that joke, but it was pretty good. But everything I know about football by Dave Witzel. But yeah.
He actually was something, though. I mean, I think he played in the 63 Chicago Bears that won the national championship. And like you said, played for New Orleans. And actually, I think he might still hold some records down there. So, I mean, he had more than a cup of coffee.
Yeah, he might. He lived down there for a long time afterwards, But he wasn't just a player. He played a lot. He was a real impact player also.
Exactly.
You know, how many, when we look at all the major sports here in high school along the West Michigan area, you know, what athletes stand out to you guys being able to get out of here and go to a Division I program and really make a name for themselves? You know, and we talk about you don't have to go to a high prolific or a Division I school. Konechny went to, was it Alma?
Right.
Was that what it was? Mark Konechny went over to Alma and got drafted by the Dolphins. You know, from there. So, but you look at some of the athletes we've had come out of our area. What was it? Harriman's from Ravenna.
Yep.
He went to Saginaw Valley, I believe. Chad Plinus. Chad Plinus, who played both sports at Central, didn't he?
Well, he was a phenomenal athlete.
And he got drafted and played in the Blue Jays organization for a while. You know that. You get somebody like that, and they can do it all. It seems like.
Has there been a better athlete to come out of Scottville than Chad Plinus?
Oh, I don't. There's back when I was a kid, when Shelby was playing, and there was a Ravens. There was a Raven that was really, really good. But all-around athlete, like Plinus had the size. He could throw hard, and he's a good rebounder in basketball. So it's kind of tough. But he's the best, I'm sure.
You know, we I'm coming up blank with a blank name on this, but we had a gentleman on from Montague, and he played middle linebacker for him in, I believe, 1972 or 1973, and he said they never gave up a point that year.
Who did?
Montague.
Montague never gave up a point.
And he was the middle linebacker on there, but it was in either 71, 72, 73, and And I remember talking to him, and I'm like, wow.
I don't know. Who is that? I don't know.
I got to think of his name.
Right.
But we had him on the show.
Yeah, we did.
And he talked about it.
Right. You know, when you talk Muskegon, of course, the grandfather of football over there is Earl Morrow.
Absolutely.
Mean, that was a guy that had an over 20-year career, Earl. And, of course, I didn't see him play in high school. He was way before my time. But he was, legendary. I do remember as a kid what a big deal that was watching him play in the Super Bowl. Now, he had the... He had the misfortune of being the quarterback of the Baltimore Colts when they played against Joe Namath in the guarantee game.
Uh-huh.
And but then he came back. He played in three Super Bowls. He comes back and he wins a Super Bowl for the Baltimore Colts. And then he wins one for the undefeated Miami Dolphins in '72. In fact, he plays most of that year because Bob Greasy got hurt. So he was certainly Billy Manor. He's got his Dolphins gear on, so that was for a little shout out.
It's
to
rented.
Billy.
It's rented.
Exactly. But he was big, and I think as far as Muskegon goes too, you had Jay Achterhoff, and that's where I was from, and so I followed those guys. Jay went on to have a great career over at Notre Dame. You had Rojo fairly recently, Ron Johnson. Ron Johnson played at USC. And
you think about it.
Yeah.
There's a lot. You can just start writing them down, like
Yeah.
Ron Johnson. Holy cow! Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There is, and it's so tough to compare. I think teams, because I think if you look at a Muskegon, they're usually playing Division I, Division II, Division III, and they're playing against a lot of guys that are going to go to the Big Ten or those type of schools. So it's kind of tough to when. For me, I had this. What's the best quarterback you ever saw? What's the best running back you ever saw?
Right.
It's how do you compare that? I mean,
when
you take into account the competition, where they're at, it's really a tough kettle of fish.
It's kind of like the best quarterback I remember around here. Was Cater.
Yeah, I'll agree.
But he's from Montague. But
Right.
He was still well, recruited.
Right.
But he was the best one I've ever known around here. Being a quarterback was Cater.
Well, again, we're talking about Cody was a multi-sport athlete and was a very good basketball player. And you look at when we talk about right now, I think it's going to be interesting to see where, like Anthony Bradford, from Muskegon, who's down at LSU, where he goes and how far he goes. Right. Okay. The other thing is, I think Khalil Pimpleton, you talk about Rojo coming out of Muskegon. It's going to be interesting to see how Pimpleton reinvents himself going in the NFL draft.
Right.
And how how he markets himself.
Right.
But he's a talent.
Yeah.
Not the biggest kid.
No.
But
and another guy that's doing it still is Willie Sneed out of Muskegon Heights.
Right.
Willie Sneed was a quarterback at Muskegon Heights, and his dad coached the team, and they led him to the best years that they've had in a long time at Heights. And now he's still playing in the. I'm not sure who he's playing for anymore. It was New Orleans for a while. I kind of lost track of where he's at, but
right.
But he's still in the NFL.
Yeah.
Once again, you write all those people down. There's a lot locally.
Yeah. There's a lot we're forgetting.
And again, would you say that our area here, is what sport produces the most college athletes in our area? Would it be basketball, football, or baseball?
Boy, I almost think it's baseball, but
I mean, has that changed over the course of time? So from the 70s, 80s, 90s,
Right.
I mean, has that kind of swung? Because, in the last 20 years up here, you've seen some really good football teams. I mean, 4 state champions out of this area in 1 year.
Right.
You put 4 out of the 8 divisions.
Yep.
That'll never happen again.
Yeah.
That'll never happen again.
no.
What's amazing, and I always say this regardless of sport, is when you talk about the championship teams we've had, still how few of those athletes go on to a big college. You know what I mean? I mean, as great as they are, so I guess what I'm saying is that just speaks to how good you have to be to be at a Division I athlete, and then obviously to go to the pros, because we all have seen fantastic athletes here. And then you'll say, okay, after after high school, what happened to them? Okay, maybe they had a couple of years in college. Now, Griffin obviously is the exception to the rule. Went to a MAC school, went to Western Michigan, and then had a nice career. And there are those exceptions. Nate McLeod, so they do break that glass ceiling, if you want to call it that. But boy, you just, I'm never, as long as I've been doing this, it never ceases to amaze me at when you talk great players at our levels in the high school, and then to go above that, how great you have to be to go to college, and then how great you have to be to get into the pros. I mean,
that's another thing. I talked to Nate McClaw's dad, who's a friend of mine, Rick, when Nate was going through the minors, and maybe before, and he said, Les, he said, every time he went somewhere, things went his way. Yeah. He'd end up hitting against a pitcher that the other scouts were looking at, and he'd end up guessing the right pitch, and he'd get a base hit. Everything worked his way. Plus, he was smart. Right. I tell you what, that helped so much when he spoke 2 languages, and he could relate. He could talk to the Latin American players. Yes. The coach, I'll tell you that. But he was smart, and so was Rick. And I think both of those together got him into the baseball, professional baseball.
We're going to take a time out, and then we're going to talk to Les about his baseball career over in Muskegon that spanned, 5 decades, something like that. We'll take a break. You're watching the Power Hour here from North Grove Brewers.
So once I started brewing, I fell in love with the industry, the people of the industry, and just how craft beer brings people together. The community has really accepted us, and really we made this place to create our clubhouse pretty much, where we want to hang out and we have the beers we want to drink and the stuff we want to do, and we really hope that the community would just be of that same mindset and want to come here too and have fun, and they sure have.
Hello, this is Dmitry, the Russian hacker. Please disregard the following message from CatchMark Technologies. It will make my life easier. Thank you.
If you own a business today, that business is exposed to digital risk. Data privacy, compliance, and of course, cyber attack risks are just a few that you may need to manage. If you don't have the staff or internal expertise to help mitigate the risks your organization faces, call CatchMark Technologies at 616-384-4616.
And welcome back. We're back here at North Grove Brewers. John Russell along with Mike Taylor and also Les Gowell, place to talk with Les, a historian and a longtime athlete. And Les, wanted to kind of get into your career a little bit because it crossed so many other people. And for forever, you pitched into your 50s over at Marsh Field there. Talk to us about that a little bit.
I guess it was back before radar guns. I could throw really, really hard. And the team in Muskegon, the best team, always wanted me because I could throw really, really hard. All right? Yeah. Much of an athlete as I was, I could just throw hard. And all of a sudden I'm playing with these guys that Walt Gakowski, who just graduated playing left field at Central Michigan University, and then I had Steve Marad at center field, who was at Michigan State. I had Charlie Jackson, who was at Weston, in right field. I've got all these Division I, didn't mean that much to me when I was a kid. Sure. But the ball hit in the gap, it got caught. We had a ball in the gap, it fell in. I won a lot of games. Because we had good players on the team. I always played with them all. And there were so many of them over the years. But everyone that went on to the minor leagues, I usually pitched against them or played with them. And it's funny because almost every one of them that went in the minor league is so tough. It is so tough to make it, just to get into the minor leagues. When they came back, they no longer wanted to play baseball. Right. Because it was a job for them that they lost the fun, I think, is what it was. Right. There's a player, Kip Southland from Muskegon Mona Shores. He played with me, played shortstop. Then he actually played against me. He went to the Muskegon, to Grand Rapids. Then he got drafted, but he came back and he doesn't play baseball. Yeah. Right. And there was a Matt Schuda from Muskegon. Matt Schuda. He played third base for me. Yep. He went to University of Michigan, played a little minor league, came back, and never played again. Right. And I can go on and on with that. And it's too bad, but they're just exceptional ball players. But you got to keep it fun. Even at the high school level, you got to keep it fun. You play better when you have fun. Right. If you play better, you have more fun, and you play better. Right. And you have more fun. Right. But it can go the other way, too. You don't play as good, you yell at each other, it goes down, and it gets worse. Same thing.
Yeah. We talk about wasted talent, the term wasted talent, okay, on a movie came out called The Bronx Tale. And the big theme of that movie was wasted talent. And we look at how many athletes come out today that have potential, okay, but whether it's like we talk about, not strong enough mentally, or ego, or work ethic, that can't quite make it because of one of those things.
You gotta want it. You gotta want it. I remember talking to Rick Zulik, who's a friend of mine at Shelby, talking about a basketball team he had at the time. They were doing pretty good. And he says the best basketball player in Shelby's walking the halls. I don't even say who it is at the time, but I know it is. And that's something, you know, you gotta want to. You know, there's a lot of good athletes, but you gotta want to do it. If you don't want to do it, I don't care how good you are. It's not gonna work, and it's not gonna help the team either.
You know, back then when we came through, there was something called peer pressure, okay? And if you hung around 5 guys and 4 of them played on a team, it's like how they got you out for wrestling.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was way back when you couldn't drink water during football practice.
There were turnbuckles in the corner.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it meant you were weak.
Yeah.
You drank water.
Yeah, my buddy recruited me for wrestling. I didn't know wrestling from anything, but we'd played together football, and he says, hey, I need somebody to work out with. So I said, man, the only wrestling I see is like big-time wrestling and all that stuff. Boy, was I in for a rude awakening.
I wonder what your big-time wrestling name would have been.
Yeah.
If Cal Van Single was here, he'd come up with one.
He'd have come up with one for me, yeah. But, no, you're right. Just, you know, so to your point about the minor leagues, it's amazing that some guys do stick it out in the minor leagues as long as they do. I mean, they make a career out of it.
It might be all they have.
Yeah, that's true.
That could be all they have.
I think in another Muskegon guy back in the day went to school with my brother. His name was Jim Johnson. He was a pitcher and center fielder for the Big Reds. He wound up playing for San Francisco. And I remember he's, to this day, if you look him up in the baseball encyclopedia, it's Jim Johnson, Muskegon, Michigan, 1-0. And he had a pretty good ERA.
That's what you see.
But he was on a pitching staff, and we watched his win. It was a Saturday. Remember, they used to have the game of the week on Saturday? And I think they were playing the Cubs. And he was the pitcher of that, and all of his high school friends were over at our house, and we were watching that game. And I thought, man, it is so cool. I was just a little kid, but watching him pitch. But if you think about that pitching staff that they had Juan Marichal, they had Gaylord Perry, they had a guy named Mike McCormick, they had a guy named Ray Sadecki, who a lot of people are going to say, who?
He was lucky to get in that one game.
Yeah, he was. And he decided that he went to school. He went to Western, was a star athlete at Western, and he decided he went to school for education. He says, you know, I'm going to go back to school, or I'm going to take my job as educator. He wound up being a superintendent over North Muskegon. Unfortunately, he passed away several years ago. But my point being was, again, if some people, to your point, if they don't see that light at the end of the tunnel, that, you know, they if they got something to fall back on, they may just fall back on it, right?
Yeah, if you have something like that. And that's, I think, with like Rick McLeod. You know, he had it all. Nate's dad could throw, he could hit, he could run, he knew the game, he was smart, but he also was going pre-med. He had this, but he fell back on that because I think Rick was about as good as Nate.
Yeah.
You know, he's probably the closest thing to a professional baseball player that didn't play baseball that I know of.
Right. Well, look at Jamie Potts.
Oh,
Oak Ridge. He's playing football and baseball at Grand Valley State. Gets drafted, I think, by the Texas Rangers. In fact, we had him on our show. He was just landed in the Rangers farm system, and he was unpacking groceries for the people that he was living with. They had like billet houses there, you know, the kind of the fans adopted players and all that stuff. And next thing I know, he's out of baseball. I think he gave it a year or two, but he was another one that went to school. I think he went into being like sports medicine or something like that. And he says, you know, hey, it was fun, but I think it's time to move on.
What was his best sport?
What's that?
What was Jamie Potts' best sport?
All of them.
Well, I don't know. I saw him play baseball, and he was probably one of the best baseball players in this area because he could run, he could throw, he could hit. You know, I don't know what's missing there. But all of a sudden, he's with a bunch of guys that can do the same thing. You get to that next level, and all of a sudden, you're looking around and go, that guy can throw as hard as me, he can run as fast as me, you know, and that guy he's hitting 400. Yeah. You know, and you got to have the mental part of that. You know, I'm still going to battle it.
You know what? When we talk about athletes, how important is it, Les, to have that support at home, that backing, the pushing?
Oh, I'm sure it's just probably one of the most important things. But most of them have that probably. You get older, you say, "Yeah, go for your dreams, give it all you got." But Jimmy Potts, all of a sudden he's living with somebody. They don't get paid very much in the minor leagues.
Right.
And if you don't have patience and see light at the end of the tunnel, like Nate McCall did, Nate knew when he got in there he was going to be in the minor leagues. You look at some of the articles, he says, "I know I'm going to be there."
Right.
And that's the thing. When Nate was at Whitehall, there was a guy named Brett Cagney who was a catcher. Brett Cagney actually might have had better stats than Nate, but he wasn't arrogant. He wasn't aggressive. He ended up going in the medical field somewhere, and he plays baseball in Grand Rapids yet with the older guys. But look at Nate. Nate was aggressive. And he had that little bit of arrogance, but he knew where to draw the line, and that made a big difference. But he knew.
What does that do to What does that do to an athlete who is all state, all conference, 2-3 years in a row in high school? They go to college, they're all conference, they're second team All American, or what? Then you go to minor league pro ball.
Yeah.
And you're bagging groceries and between games, and what does that do to you?
Oh, yeah.
How does that affect you?
Oh, that would be tough, wouldn't it? I think that's the downfall of a lot of players that get to that point. And maybe Jamie the same way. I don't know, because he was good. Jamie is good. I mean, I don't think he might have struck out his whole senior season in baseball, in high school. But it takes so much to be in it. Like you say, you can be 4 times All-State in high school, Mike, play 4 years of college football, and I'd have heard about you, but your success story is right now.
All right.
Because you're not going to be in the NFL, but you could have been All-State 4 years. I said, yeah, there's Mike Taylor. In 4 years in college, yeah, you're still playing. But after that, what? Right. Your success story is doing what you're doing right now.
Yeah. That's crazy. And you talk about, fellas, over the course of time, one of the things in athletics that has changed is strength and conditioning and nutrition. I would say strength and nutritioning programs being involved and incorporated. That's a game changer.
My son, when he played basketball in Muskegon Community College, he went there first and he went to Elmhurst, but he wishes he'd have been more into the weights because basketball's so physical. Right. A guy with one arm on you can push you around. Yeah. But now everybody does that. Right. They're all into weights. My grandson here at Montague, he's into the weight. He's might be doing that right now.
But Les, look at the change in philosophies. I mean, back in certainly your day, and probably Mike and ours days as well, or our days back then, is lifting weights in baseball. That was something that you didn't do. They didn't want you to lift weights.
No,
because you're going to build.
You need that flexibility.
You needed the flexibility. Then I remember like a Lance Parrish comes in, and this guy's like a Greek god.
I picture him right now.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, that kind of changes a little bit. But it's kind of interesting how philosophies change, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. But it gets more fine-tuned also. They're going to work on different parts of your body that you're going to keep your flexibility, I guess. Because weightlifting before was a barbell maybe? I don't know. Right. And now it's all fine-tuned. My grandson knows so much about it, I don't.
Yeah. Well, and being a multi-sport athlete helps develop your core strength also. Right. So, I think that's real important. And today you see so many sports-specific athletes. We talk about that a lot. Yeah. These kids are focused on one thing. And to me, it's interesting when you talk about high school athletics. And no matter where you're at up here in our area, it seems that football is the only one that is actually recruited for football season. You know what I mean? Because basketball and baseball, they don't get recruited as much out of their high schools. They get recruited out of the summer programs, the travel ball.
Yes.
Because the competition is more consistent.
Right. And the coaches have time also to watch that.
And so that's, and again, you don't have that opportunity or luxury with football in the summertime to go around. People can watch you in 7-on-7s and watch your foot speed, how you move in space, and, your hand-eye coordination, all that stuff. But the intangibles involved with football, they usually get recruited during football season in the fall. Right. But that's one thing I've noticed is if you're going to go to a school for baseball, okay, I can't prove that with Nate, but I'd be willing to bet in the summertime.
I think you're right. Because you want to face the best pitcher. Okay, this best pitcher is going to be in this tournament down here by Detroit. Let's get into that tournament.
Well, and I'll use a case in point. Shelby had an athlete maybe 4 or 5 years ago named Matt Felt. Matt Felt in high school batted 600. Okay, and where's Matt today?
Yeah,
You know,
because he was really, really good too. Probably out of all the years, top 10 that I can think of with Potts. You know,
Yeah.
Potts was so good.
and but there's a case in point we talk about where somebody plays against inconsistent talent, game in, game out, and so the stats don't really tell the truth, because of the competition that how it changed every game for him. Now in the summer league, he gets in those travel leagues and he's playing against consistently a better quality of athlete.
Right.
Right. So
Basically, it's like playing Class A
Yeah.
Yes.
in the summertime, like you talk about down here. And when I was a kid, Muskegon was a long ways away.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
but that's where the good teams were. But they were like the major leagues in every sport.
Right.
Muskegon area teams because they're
Right.
big.
Right.
Right.
And that's kind of like it is in the summer league. You're going to play. Everybody can play Class A if they want to.
Yeah. Let's talk about when Brian Wright was here. We talked about, because he's a baseball guy too, and I know you're a multi-sport guy, but obviously you have a love for baseball. The thing that bothers me a little bit, and I don't know, maybe it's a changing of times or whatever. My brother and I coached. We coached Pony League over in the Orchard View area in Muskegon about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And when I was a kid, they used to have to chase us off the fields. I always tell that story.
Yeah.
They'd chalk the fields and we'd be playing. We wouldn't always have 9 kids or whatever, but you'd play Indian ball, whatever the thing was. The thing is now, you see empty
No.
fields. You don't see kids play
Now
baseball
that
like they used
social
to.
media, I remember every kid had his glove on their bike handlebars.
Right.
And they were going down the Lily Field, and that's where you spent most of the day.
Right. So I guess my question to that, Les, is what do you see as the future of baseball? Are you concerned about it?
It's going to be more specialized. You're going to have a group of kids, 10, 15 kids that like it, and they're good at it. People talk about them, and they're going to keep doing it. But it'll take away a lot of other kids, that love the game.
Right. Yeah. And they keep trying to fiddle with the game a little bit. In other words, they're trying to make it glamorous. They're trying to make it faster in a lot of ways. And I get that. I mean, nobody really wants to set for 4 hours every night. I mean, there's a few baseball junkies, but with the attention span of kids and everybody right now, they're trying to do stuff. They're putting in, like they timing the pitchers between pitches. I don't think they've ever really. They put that in, but they're not really.
They tried to.
They try to. I mean, but I think you got to be careful with how much you tweak baseball, don't you?
Yeah, because I think the old-time baseball, that's what people like.
Right.
It's always been America. And I think people need that, especially nowadays.
Right.
Just an old-time baseball game is pretty good. Like right now, with baseball being locked out for the professional,
Yeah.
people, I'm going to watch a baseball game. I remember when you couldn't get out in the pandemic, I came down and watched a softball scrimmage in Whitehall with Matt Hausman was playing. I'm thinking, well, this is great. I'm watching it from the parking lot, but I got to watch a ball game. And it just made me feel more, at ease.
Yeah. And money has changed everything. And again, getting back to baseball lockout, they've already said the first 2 series, I think, they're not going to play those. And who knows where this is all going to go. And I think you got to, I'll tell you another thing they're going to have to watch. Nobody's talking about it, but what are the injuries going to be like this year? Because I think once they do get into camp, and I'm assuming they will, there's going to be this pressure to rush them a little bit more. And I think you have a potential for really this malaise of injuries too. I mean, there's a lot there.
Because pitchers and catchers haven't reported yet. That was supposed to happen like a month ago.
Exactly. Yeah. What do you think of pitch counts? You were a pitcher.
I threw 20 innings once.
Yeah.
The whole game. Got beat 3-1. I had my pitch count, I didn't know, probably 200. But everybody's different.
Right.
Everybody's built different too.
Right. I mean,
and ask Nolan Ryan. He didn't like him.
No, he didn't like him.
But he's old school like me.
Right.
Lolich and McLean.
Yeah, Lolich he'd throw more in the bullpen than most of these guys do in the game, right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know there's that line of wanting to protect arms. I get that. I think money, again, has changed that, don't you? Where agents are now somewhat more dictatorial and
they might be able to pull the pitcher.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because you're talking contracts. You're always playing for that future. I mean, money is definitely I don't begrudge anybody for making money. I mean, hey, that's great. But, I look at these guys locked out now, and I'm thinking, really? I mean, how much more money do you need?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe that's the way I would look at it. How much more money do you need?
Yeah.
Are you comfortable right now?
Yeah. I don't know, but when you're talking the future of the game, you just never know.
I want to kind of open this can of worms up, Les, with you. Over the course of time, we talk about this a lot, John and I have. Over the course of time, something that's really missing in today's society, when we grew up, the playgrounds. It didn't matter what time you went there, when school was out or on the weekends, something was going on.
Yep.
Okay, you knew where to go. You might get involved in a basketball game, a football game, a touch football game,
or all of them,
or a baseball game, because you could get that many kids together. Okay, where's that gone?
Yeah,
It's disappeared.
It's really missing. And I drive by the Little League field at Shelby where I used to play, and you see nobody there ever.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad, really, because I just remember play till dark, till the bats were flying around.
Right.
That's when you had to go home.
Yeah. Well, like I said, East Muskegon Little League used to turn kids away, kind of. You had to make the team, put it that way. Now I don't know if they got enough teams to even have a league anymore.
Right. That's a struggle with a lot of communities, even here, having enough players to have a league.
Yeah.
There's so many other things for kids to do, and the pandemic just added to that.
Right.
But even the kids, I mean, how they grow up today, and how that evolved in 40 years to where.
What they can do with their kids.
You go by a playground right now, somebody's watching you thinking there's a drug deal going on. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, somebody's over at the park.
Right.
Something's about to go down. And it used to be, I can't begin to tell you how many playgrounds in the city were just packed.
Right.
And I mean, they wanted to play a game, and you played hard because if you lost, you sat. Okay? And if you played football, we played to 20 touchdowns in the sandlots. Okay, which usually ended up 5 because a fight would break out.
Right. Right.
But it's just interesting how popular and how populated those recreation areas were back in the day.
Yeah, somebody was telling me just recently that in the Dominican Republic, these kids, they just pump out these baseball players, and they play with sticks and a baseball that might be a ball of yarn yet, but they get good at it. And they're basically doing what we used to do when we were kids. They playing all day long, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. In any sport, if you're going to do it, you're going to get better at it. Your body's going to figure out the best way to throw or to hit or to catch.
Well, and Les, when you grew up, did you guys play wiffle ball a lot?
Yeah.
I mean, did you play with the wiffle ball? I mean, how do you attribute being able to throw as long? I mean, you were pitching in organized baseball until about a week and a half ago. I mean, so I mean, most people right now, our shoulders are, the joints are worn out, brother. But again, you never questioned it. You met the challenge. You did it. Why? How?
I don't know. You just did it.
But I mean, it's like I didn't know any better. I could handle it physically, and we did it.
Yeah, well, and that's like when I threw 20 innings. You just do it. You just do it. If it doesn't work out, the next time you won't do it.
But were you taught to do that? I mean, was that something like you?
Well, everybody, you just did it. Everybody did it back then. There was no pitch counts, or in any sport it was all different. The sport-specific weightlifting, that wasn't occurring back then either.
Right.
There wasn't somebody saying you shouldn't do that. They're saying it's not dark yet. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
All right, you ready for this part?
Okay.
I want at least 2 answers from each of you, okay? Over the last 40, 50 years here, who are your top 2 quarterbacks you would take from our area over the last 40, 50 years?
Because he knows the Muskegon kids.
No, actually not really, because most of the games we called are up here because they usually have like 12 outlets doing the Muskegon games, so there was no point in us really doing those. So I actually know the kids up here probably better than Muskegon. I mean, since I've been broadcasting, to be honest with you. But What, you talking quarterbacks?
Yeah, quarterback. I want to know who your top 2 quarterbacks you've seen play come out of our area.
I can't. We're going to agree on one.
Yeah.
I can't.
We may
argue,
have both the same ones.
I can't argue with him on Cody Cater.
Cody Cater.
Yeah, that would be that. And then the boy.
I'm Cameron Martinez.
Yeah.
I mean, he was something.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anybody just to be different.
Well, Potts. You know,
Potts,
he's got to be up there
Potts was
too.
solid.
I mean,
he's got to be in the top 5.
Right.
You know, but you look at some of the quarterbacks that Mona's. I mean, Tyree Jackson.
You
know what I mean?
Yeah, if Jackson doesn't get hurt.
Exactly.
I mean, they probably win a state championship that year. He winds up getting hurt in that game where they lost 2 other quarterbacks. They wind up winning it with their 3rd-string quarterback. And one of the greatest games I ever called, it was against Harrison. That was a phenomenal game. So you're right. Yeah, Tyree. I think he's playing for the Eagles now, or trying to.
And you know, it was like when his group of athletes came through Mona Shores. That was a turning point,
right,
for Mona Shores football.
Right.
You know, it rolled over and they've been strong since. But that's interesting. How about your running backs? Think about your running backs. Right?
Ronald Johnson.
Yeah, Johnson was a darn good one. I'm trying to be different, but boy.
You know, there was a kid from Montague years ago. You don't remember him.
I mean,
his name was Brian Balon.
Okay.
And I announced the football games.
Brian Balon?
Yeah, I announced football games for like 40 years. It seemed like PA announcer.
Well,
and he was playing at Shelby, and he ran over everybody.
Right.
Like, who is this guy?
Right.
This guy, I still know him. He still thinks he's good, but he's not.
Well, yeah, a guy that comes to mind to me is from this area. Well, he is now, and now he's down over in Schoolcraft. Is Benny Clark.
Benny Clark.
Benny Clark. We read
Oh,
all
yeah,
the record
right.
books.
So
And,
you could right now you could get a list going
I know.
and find all the. Oh yeah, I remember
Yeah,
him.
I know,
I remember
we're
him. I
forgetting
remember
a
him.
lot of folks,
Benny
I know.
Clark. Yeah, right. I remember him.
Right.
Right, and again, his name slips me. He's down at Western. He went to Michigan State, and he was a quarterback and high school player of the year. Okay, not Deshaun Thrower, but right before, or right after Deshaun. But he's the running back at Western right now, and boy,
You're not talking Jefferson, are you?
Yes.
Ladarius. Ladarius Jefferson.
You know, Ladarius is a loaded running back.
He went
also.
to state for a cup of coffee, kind of, and then he didn't like what was going on there, and he got out of Michigan State. He went down to Michigan State, played a little bit, and then wound up going to. So he's doing well now.
Yeah. And when you think about explosive players in football, who was it? Every time they touched the ball, he had the potential to go.
Martinez.
You know, and I don't think there's any doubt about that one.
Right.
I mean, I don't think. I mean,
How would you like to tackle him?
no. But I think I'd rather try and catch Martinez than I would tackle Potts.
Yeah.
You know, at least I don't get hurt failing there.
You aren't going to catch Martinez, and Potts is going to kill you.
Yeah. I'll tell you, in the NFL, who was that way for me was Lem Barney, the original number 20. I had the pleasure later on of getting to know him a little bit, and just a humble guy. But, man, that guy could hurt you in so many ways. He was a punt returner. I don't think he'd return kicks, but he'd be out there. The Detroit Lions were more apt to score on their defense back in those days than he was, because he'd pick somebody and take it for a touchdown.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
How about your top 3 basketball players the last 40 years, 50 years? Top
I'm
3.
going with Paul Griffin. I'm kind of biased there, but
okay,
he
got
played
Paul.
in the NBA. You know, when I went downstate with Paul, people loved him. They loved him in New Orleans because he rebounded. He wasn't worried about scoring, and people all of a sudden came to this. They really appreciated somebody that played defense because everybody wanted to start to
work
score.
ethic.
He wasn't like that, and they knew that.
Right.
But Paul Griffin would be my number 1. Maybe Chad Blinus. I'm sure there's somebody else.
The best team I ever saw, and again, I didn't see the Shelby teams back then, but since my broadcasting, it was a 2015 Muskegon Big Reds.
Deontay Davis?
Deontay Davis was on that team. Thrower was on that team. They had a kid named Jordan Ware. Was a
Who was
guard
Hip
on the
Hop?
team.
Hip Hop.
Hip Hop was Kennedy.
Yeah.
And the thing that was amazing about those guys, well, actually, 2 Mr. Basketballs came off of that team.
How'd they get beat?
Thrower won it, yeah. Thrower won it one year, and then Davis won it the next year. But they were like a jazz ensemble. They would, if one of them they didn't have bad games, but if somebody wasn't scoring, one of the other guys would pick them up. I mean, it was an amazing thing. They wound up winning this state championship, and then unfortunately, if there was a 30-30 or an ESPN 30-30 about what had happened to that team afterwards, it'd be kind of a sad story in some ways because of what happened to some of the guys in that team. But I still say to this day, because I was always asked that question about the best team I saw, and I would say that was that 2015 Muskegon
they were
Red
phenomenal.
Team. Yeah,
They were fun to watch also.
They were.
I'll tell you what though, you talk about a team that just plays such up tempo.
Right.
I mean, that was a team that went up and down that court.
Right.
And if you had a stiff neck, that's not the game you want to go watch.
And Davis was a kid that, oftentimes when we're calling games, you see a kid play his first game, and then by the end of the season, you say, well, he's a different player. He's not a freshman anymore or a sophomore. That goes without saying. But Davis was the one kid that I saw improve game to game.
Is that right?
He was game to game, he'd get better. At Michigan State, when he went there was that big debate of whether he was going to leave early or not. And I know there's money and all that type of stuff, and that's great. And maybe I'm Pollyannish, but I would watch him play at Michigan State, and I think he was leading the team in blocks. And he wasn't playing the entire game, but he was learning. You know what I mean? Izzo was kind of bringing him in, getting him his time, and I still say, hindsight's 20/20. He made his money, so that's a good thing. But there's a part of me that would say, boy, if he would have just stayed in school.
Was Deontay Davis, was he mismanaged, or do you think he was given bad advice?
I don't, it's hard. It's hard not to take the money. You know what I mean? It's hard when you got that money there.
But when you saw
as
many players as you've seen, and you see him improve every game, and all of a sudden that happens, it's got to affect you, thinking, whoa, something happened.
Right. Yeah, I think, I've heard different things, but I think there was a push. I mean, I think when you get that kind of money.
And you're 17, 18 years old.
18 years old.
He wasn't even starting for Michigan State for most of the games then.
Right.
What do you think Izzo said to him? What do you think his conversation with Izzo went like when he talked about maybe leaving?
It's a conversation Izzo's had before, so he's prepared.
I mean, is he in favor of it? I mean, does he say these are the pros, these are the cons?
I think that's where he goes.
You need to weigh it out.
Right. But I'll tell you, Mike, money clouds a lot of things. It really does. It clouds the best intentions. And I mean, I can't fault anybody if they hand you that money. I mean, I would like to think, I don't know. I don't want to say something that's going to be bad here, but I just think money enters into it. Money just changes everything.
Okay, now again, in baseball with Nate McLouth. Nate McLouth comes right out of high school. Okay, and what's he do?
What about him?
What did he do right out of high school?
Oh, yeah, he went to the pros, but he had this. He was so smart. I remember his dad telling me when the Pittsburgh Pirate guy was at the house, and they said, nope, he's going to go to Michigan. Right. And the Pittsburgh Pirate guy went out to his car, made a call. He'd come back in, offer him more. No, we're still going to go. They basically went on that for a little while because Dad was smart. And finally, they came up with a figure they couldn't turn down for a bonus.
Sure.
Exactly. But he had it smart because he was going to go to U of M full ride. And I think part of the deal was after baseball, they were still going to pay for his full ride if you wanted to.
Right.
We've only got about a minute left, guys, so where do you want to go as far as wrapping things up?
Well, I guess, you've got some talented genes running through your family bloodlines there, and your daughters and son have blessed you with some grandchildren. What kind of a role do you play with them now in watching them grow and develop athletically, Les? Because, your kids were good, very good athletes, okay, and excelled at everything they did. How do you see them raising their kids after they grew up with you?
I think they realize the more fun they have, the better they are. And you got to keep it fun. And when your kids go on and want to coach the sport that they were playing in, I think that just says, yeah, I was successful. Because Angie coaches softball, Aaron's coach, well, he loves basketball, and he was a good baseball. He coaches, and Amy could coach anything too. They can coach, and that's what I think. When they're going to treat their kids the same way and make sure they know the more fun they had, the better the teams were. And that's what you got to do. I don't care what you do, you got to have fun. At whatever age you are, you got to have fun. You got to have discipline too. And there's more discipline the older you get, but you got to keep that fun in there because, like I said, those minor league baseball players that came back that never played again. Right now, they've never played again. I don't even know if they watched the game because it wasn't fun anymore. It was a job.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been fun to have Les Gowell in here. I hope you had a little bit of fun with it.
Well, it's always fun. I always have fun with Mike.
All right.
Well, I tell you what, we talked about a lot of players today. We talked about a lot of players.
There you go. That's going to do it for us. Want to thank Billy. Want to thank Matt for producing this thing for us, and want to thank you folks out there as well. And want to thank North Grove Brewers and, of course, VanDyk Mortgage. It's the Power Hour here. Have yourself a good night, everybody.
VanDyk Mortgage, we started 1987, July of 1987. The company was founded here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We recruited Mario in to join our company as one of our branches to serve the Muskegon community. He has grown to 5 locations, serving people up and down the lake shore.
A lot of companies, they're sometimes in it more for themselves and closing that deal for just their monetary reward. And I think with Mario and his company, it's not just that, and I don't know if that always happens in our world.